Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be talking about the best of Holo Taco. If you're new to my channel, I created my best of mini series last year as a way to talk about some of my brand favorites, especially in time for the upcoming Black Friday, Cyber Monday, holiday shopping time. I've been receiving PR from Holo Taco for a couple of years now, but before then I didn't really have that many of their polishes. It was really just a small handful, and unfortunately I feel like a lot of my favorites from this brand end up getting retired, so it was a little bit of a struggle to come up with this list, but I hope that you'll still enjoy my picks and me talking about some of the things I love but also some things that I don't love about this brand. As always, timestamps will be in the description box for everything, but for now let's just get into the best of Holo Taco. So before getting into the actual nail polish, I do want to start with their nail essentials, which basically covers their base and top coats. I do know that Holo Taco also offers these other tools like brushes and whatnot, but I don't have any of those, so I won't be speaking on them obviously. And as you can see, I only have one product here, and that is their pink smoothing base coat. So I really like this as a pink smoothing base. It's just really milky and flattering, but like a little bit sheer, so it's really versatile if you want to wear this in one coat on its own or do two coats for a really clean base for negative space nail art, which I personally love to do. The only word of warning that I have with this though is that it does contain that one ingredient, PVB, that I have heard a lot of people say causes peeling. It's the same ingredient that was in Orly's Bonder and Island Pea's lockup base coat, which again, I haven't tried Orly's Bonder, but with Island Pea's base coat, I do really love that one, and I don't admittedly like reach for this super often to the point that I would notice my peeling is like getting worse or anything. So, you know, just as a word of warning, but if you do want to have like a nice pink smoothing base to add to the rotation of your base coats, for example, I think this is a really nice one to try. The only other essential that I've tried from Holo Taco is their Glossy Taco, and I personally don't like that one. I feel like that's kind of an unpopular opinion, but maybe not, because I feel like a lot of people, at least when it comes to Holo Taco, really loved the super glossy taco, but they retired that one. And I know that a lot of people have said glossy taco just doesn't really compare, and I would agree with that. I just don't think it's that great of a top coat, so I personally wouldn't recommend it. Now, getting into their actual nail polishes, I do want to start with their creams, which I know a lot of people probably find really boring, but I think Holo Taco definitely has had some really fantastic cream polishes when it comes to their colors and obviously their formulas too. So the first two polishes I have are from the Cookies and Cremes bundle earlier this year. I would say my top favorite is Peri-Social, which is just this really beautiful, perfect periwinkle cream. I love how bright this is, where it's not too dusty or grayed out, and obviously it has a fantastic formula that is just so full coverage. It self-levels beautifully. It's just like what I expect from Holo Taco creams. And honestly, I would also just generally recommend the other creams in that bundle, especially the pastels, because for pastels, they had really great coverage. But if I am going off of my favorite color, Peri-Social is definitely going to win that. But my other top favorite from that set was Ginger Snatched, which I also recently shared in my fall favorites video this year. It is just such a beautiful, cozy, flattering kind of shade. I think this is described as like a warm cinnamon brown, and I love that so much. Like, I'm not even the biggest fan of cinnamon to begin with, but as a nail polish, it is so pretty. And again, it had that same flawless formula, so what's not to love? And the last cream that I have is Headhunter from the Dark Academia collection. I just talked about this recently in my own Dark Academia collection video, and I just was saying that this is the perfect shade of green when I think of that aesthetic. It just truly is like the perfect dark hunter green. I have a decent amount of dark greens in my collection, but they all lean a little bit more emerald or like pine green. and I didn't have like a dupe for this, and this is just a beautiful shade to fill that gap in my collection. The other added bonus is that it is a one coat formula. At least it is on me now that I have shorter nails, but even when I originally swatched this on my longer nails, it was a one coater, which isn't super surprising considering it is a pretty dark shade. So yeah, I would say if you are a green lover, you need this one. So yeah, even though this finish isn't the most exciting, I feel like Holo Taco definitely does make really great creams. My biggest gripe around them though is just their price point, where I feel like they are very pricey. And I know that you can get some cheaper ones from the drugstore, for example, especially since a lot of drugstore brands have improved their formulas over the years, but they might not just have the range of colors with like these subtle nuances. So I feel like there is a better chance of finding your ideal kind of cream finish, or color rather, in a boutique brand like Holo Taco. I guess my only other gripe though with their creams is that not all of them have the same kind of consistency or formula. There are a few that have a little bit more of like a crelly leaning formula, which just is not my personal preference. I think the worst offender for that is Oh My Gourd, which is this really beautiful bright pumpkin orange. Like, I love the color, but I don't love the formula. I feel like that one is more often than not a 3-coater because it's just a little too sheer and kind of patchy. I also remember hearing a lot of that same feedback for the pastel bundle last year. From what I remember, I had a really great experience with those, so I don't know if it's just like a batch issue or just the differences in application. I feel like pastels obviously are pretty notorious for having just tricky or finicky formulas to begin with. I definitely had a good experience with Holo Taco's pastels, but I know not everybody did, so I did want to just put that out there to maybe check a couple of reviews, watch a couple of videos to see the application for yourself, because those definitely were some really cute colors where they weren't just pastels. I feel like they were a little bit more vibrant and fun, but you know, some people just don't love that. They don't love pastels in general. And I guess the safest option with Holo Taco is going for any darker creams. Those are usually going to be closer to like creamy one coat kind of coverage. Moving on to their specialty finishes, I want to start with their crushed holos because that's personally one of my favorite finishes from Holo Taco, which I feel like is an unpopular opinion. I know a lot of people don't love this finish. It's basically like a very finely milled, shredded holographic microflake that's very, very densely packed together. So it's not just like taking a flaky topper and doing 1 or 2 coats. It's a lot more dense than that, but it's also a lot more subtle compared to a scattered flaky kind of polish. So I can definitely understand for a lot of holo lovers, they're not going to love this more subtle holo effect. I think it does have a really pretty sparkle, and you know, sometimes I am in the mood for a more subtle kind of sparkle, so these are really appealing to me. The first one I want to talk about is Orbite Me, which was from the I Need Space collection earlier this year. It is just this beautifully dark and vampy kind of brick red kind of color. I feel like this is one of those shades that just picks up a lot darker on camera, or at least on my iPhone, compared to how you see it in real life. But I think in this lighting, you can see just like that beautiful brownish red color. It is just so beautiful, especially for this time of year. And I feel like in general, I just like the darker colors of their crushed holos, maybe because they just provide more contrast for that crushed holo sparkle. I really am hoping that they will release like these darker, almost jewel tone kind of shades in the future. I feel like it would be so perfect for fall. Yeah, this one is a super beautiful shade. And the next two are from the Rock Candy collection from the summer. And these were crushed holos that included a shimmer pigment. So it was very similar to Spyglass from the Royalty Quad earlier in the year. And while Spyglass was popular, I feel like not a lot of people ended up loving this collection because they said that the shimmer was kind of dulling out the polish or the sparkle, where it's almost competing with the crushed holo effect. And you might remember that I also had some mixed feelings about this collection too, but I just want to remind everyone that it was because I was comparing these to other brands that had a similar kind of finish, but those other brands had shimmers that were a lot more glowy and intense, which is just my personal preference. So when I'm comparing them, I like the other brands more. But if we are just looking at Holo Taco, I feel like that collection still is pretty. One of my favorites was Electric Sweetner, which was this really bright, punchy purple kind of color with this blue shimmer and of course the crushed hollow effect. Obviously we have seen blue shimmers in purple bases done to death in the indie space, but I just really love the base color of this one. It's not a typical purple, at least that I would go for. I think it's super fun and perfect for the spring and summer season especially, and I feel like the blue shimmer, even though it's not super glowy and in your face, it's still really pretty. But I would say my top favorite from that collection was Sour Note. This is such a beautifully bright, vibrant, medium shade of green that has this really pretty pink shimmer that shifts to this yellow gold in extreme lighting. I've definitely come around to how much I love green polishes the past couple of years, but I wouldn't consider myself like a green lover or like a green aficionado or anything. But this one is one of my favorite greens. It is just so bright and sparkly. I just think it's so pretty. I especially love that yellowy golden shimmer that it has. If anything, I wish that the shimmer color was reversed so that you see the yellow head on and then it shifts to pink in extreme lighting. But either way, it is just such a fun color for summer. So I'm gonna be grouping these next several polishes all together, even though they are different finishes. I feel like I just didn't have enough of each finish to like make their own category, if that makes sense. But the first two are linear holos, and my top pick is 50 Shades of Greige from the Declassified set last year. Remember when I said in my intro that Holo Taco tends to retire a lot of my favorite polishes? Unfortunately, this is another one added to that list. I really don't understand why they're getting rid of this one because it is just such a beautiful, classic, neutral kind of shade where even though it is described as a greige, I feel like there is a little bit of like a warmer undertone, even though there is all of this like intense holographic flare. I think it's such a beautiful and elegant kind of color, and the holo is just so intense even under like desk lighting. So it's a shame to see that this one is not going to be making a return after this winter season. And, you know, I'm not trying to say this like to encourage FOMO or anything. On the flip side, if you do happen to miss out on this shade, I feel like Starly's Infinity Rose is probably a really close alternative to this. The other linear holo that I have is Dead Petals from the Dark Rainbow collection a couple of years ago. I've mentioned a couple of times on my channel already that I'm not like the biggest fan of linear holo, which I know might sound so crazy, but you know, sometimes I'm just like not really in the mood for these super intense rainbowy nails. So that's why I don't have a lot of Holo Tacos holos in my collection, but I feel like color wise, I definitely am gravitating more towards the darker shades. I don't know if they just provide like better contrast for the holo or the colors are just nicer in my opinion, but Dead Petals is definitely one of my favorites because it's like the only one that I have from the Dark Rainbow bundle. I also really liked the idea of the pastel linear holos, but I definitely have more of the darker ones on my wish list, like Sunken Secrets or Lost in the Woods, which is like the dark pine green. But I'm still on the fence about actually getting them because I just like don't wear them super often. But for the one that I have, I really love this one. I mean, it's especially beautiful for this time of year, being this really dark, plummy kind of purple. I feel like when it comes to a lot of linear holos though, it's like kind of easy to be able to find dupes of them in like other brands, but color wise, I feel like this one is on the more unique side. So that's why I picked it up and I would recommend it. The next two polishes I have, I would kind of consider to be like shimmers. I know the second one for sure, but this first one is like shimmer, maybe shimmer metallic, and that is Holo Taco's I'm Rover It from the I Need Space collection earlier this year. I absolutely loved this one first when it came out, but I just knew right away it was gonna be one of my favorites for the fall, and that's probably where you remember seeing it recently on my channel in my fall favorites video. It is this stunning dark red orange kind of base color with this really intense golden glowy shimmer and this scattered hollow kind of micro flaky. It is just so beautiful, so incredibly warm and cozy and perfect for fall. I generally love these kind of formulas, or finishes rather, where it's like a shimmery base but with this dainty hollow sparkle. This one I feel like does lean a little bit on like the metallic side for some reason. I don't know if it's like the shimmer in particular, but it is a little bit different as well with the hollow flakies in this one. I think just being a little larger, and I am a fan of that. I would love to see this finish in other colors, especially deeper ones. I feel like they would just look so cool. It's like liquid fire on your nails. The next shade is definitely the more true kind of shimmer finish, and that one is Secret Society, which I would have never guessed I would include this in my best of Holo Tacos, but it is such a cool and unique polish. It has this really like grungy, dingy gray base with this super strong contrasting kind of yellow to light green sort of shimmer in extreme lighting, and this dusting of a holographic sparkle. It is just so cool and eerie. I shared this most recently in my favorite witchy kind of shades, where it just reminds me of being like in this creepy underground basement and it's all lit by candles and you don't know what's going on, and it's very much giving like Secret Society vibes, and it is just so cool. Like, I love being able to envision these settings through nail polish, so I think this is such a standout. This next polish I have is one of their frosted metals, and it's Silent Library from the Dark Academia collection. Now, this one, even though it is described as a frosted metal, it's definitely a different or new version of their frosted metal formula. As I'm sure so many of you know, their original frosted metals featured these really foily metallic kind of finishes that unfortunately would tarnish over the years, which is why they retired so many of them and are continuing to do so. The most recent one was Favorite Sister. So I can understand them not wanting to introduce that many polishes, especially permanent polishes, in that finish that just is so unstable. So it makes sense to reformulate it, but I know not a lot of people loved this reformulation because it pretty much is just kind of like a silver metallic microflake formula. I think it's really pretty. I mean, it especially works for this base color in my opinion, where it just gives me those like moody blue vibes that I think is going to be so fitting for winter. But I totally understand that this just does not have nearly the same amount of intense foily reflective kind of sparkle that the original frosted metals had, but it's still really beautiful if you do want to consider a kind of metallic flaky finish. I feel like this is a really pretty one, especially for the color. And the last polish that I have is one of their magnetics, and this also should not be a surprise. It is Menchie Cat Eye, which was from their birthday collection last year. I was so surprised with how much I loved this polish because, like I said before, I'm not really like a green lover, and I am especially picky when it comes to any sort of like chartreuse, yellow leaning green sort of shade, which this is definitely that, and it is just easily one of my favorite polishes. This is another one that I feel like absolutely nailed the inspiration, obviously being Menchie's eyes. Like with the cat eye effect, it is like one-to-one and just so beautiful. It's definitely one of the most unique shades of green that I have in my collection, and especially being a magnetic, I just really love it, and I'm so happy that it stuck around. Speaking of their magnetics though, I would say that is another one of my favorite finishes from Holo Taco, which is also like another unpopular opinion. Back when they first introduced this finish, it was with their Magnetic Magic collection in the winter a couple of years ago, and I had a really great experience with those shades, but I remember a lot of people did not. I think specifically it was the blue and purple shades that were the most difficult when it came to actually magnetizing them. But if I remember correctly, I feel like a lot of people just said in general Holo Taco wasn't as good as other brands when it came to how well they magnetize. My best guess for that is that those original magnetics were very, very pigmented, like almost one coat coverage, which is really impressive, and I do like that. I prefer having more full coverage magnetics, but because the base is just so pigmented and just on the thicker side, I feel like it doesn't let the magnetic shimmer move as freely as it would in a thinner, more jelly-based magnetic, if that makes sense. I don't know if there was also just like batch issues, because again, I had a really great experience with magnetizing my Holo Taco magnetics, but I saw with my own eyes people trying to magnetize a polish and it just would not move. So that's a shame that there were some, inconsistencies. I feel like that has happened before with Holo Taco, but mainly when it comes to their colors. Like I think the other time that it happened, it was with the Dark Rainbow collection with, I think it was called Crimson Void, where it was pictured as this super dark red linear holo, but then once people were getting their collections in, their bottle of Crimson Void looked very, very close to dead petals. So I definitely understand the frustration of, expecting a color that you see on the website and then not getting that. But when it comes to their magnetics, the issue was more about the formula versus the colors. And again, it just sucks because I had a great experience with them. I generally liked that collection as well because, as I've mentioned before, when it comes to my preference with magnetics, not only do I prefer them to be a little bit more pigmented, I also prefer them having an additional sparkle outside of the magnetic shimmer, and Holo Taco includes that with these like matching kind of metallic flakies or little holographic flecks, and I just think they're so pretty. In general though, they did improve their magnetic formula once they released the birthday trio with Menchie Cat Eye, Xyler Cat Eye, and Cool Cat Mom. I feel like a lot more people had better experiences with magnetizing those polishes, and you saw my swatch, it definitely magnetized very easily. They did retire a couple of the original magnetics though. I believe the purple was one of them, which definitely was one of the problem shades, but the second one was the brown, which was Fairy Tale, and I'm assuming it was just because it was the lowest selling, being a brown magnetic. That was absolutely devastating to me because that was my top favorite from the collection. So it truly is such a shame because I feel like, again, that one didn't have any issues when it came to actually magnetizing it. They just retired it because it was not one of their best sellers. At least from the magnetics that they still have available, you generally can't go wrong with them, though I have heard a lot of people had issues with the blue, Twice in a Blue Moon, also being incredibly difficult to magnetize. My only issue with that one is that it smells. Like, some blue polishes have that really funky smell, and that one is definitely one of them. I'm not someone who has a very sensitive nose in the first place, so the fact that I could smell it kind of sucks. But either way, Holo Taco has really amazing customer service, so even if you weren't happy with any of your magnetics, they are gonna make it right. So that wraps up my best of Holo Taco. As always, I can't wait to hear what you think of my favorites and if we have any in common, or I would love to know if you are gonna be adding any of them to your wish list, or just let me know what's on your wish list in general. I really feel like Holo Taco is a great beginner-friendly kind of brand where their finishes are kind of on the simple side, where they aren't as complex as a lot of other indies on the market especially, and I know they have their reasons for that, mainly being ingredient sourcing, but they have over the years introduced a couple of newer mixed finish kind of formulas. I think the first time was with the Vacation collection last summer, and I really enjoyed that one too. So that collection did have a lot of reflective glitters, which again I know is not for everybody, everybody, but I definitely love them. And most recently they had their birthday collection, which had a lot of these mixed finish formulas. But like I said in the intro, a lot of my favorite Holo Taco shades just end up getting retired, whether it's because they're limited edition in the first place, or they get retired because of things like low sales or unstable formulas. It's just such a shame because I have a lot of favorites from this brand that just are not around anymore, mainly their holiday glitters. I know last year they did introduce their After Midnight collection, which were these like glitter kind of replacement polishes, for lack of a better term, and they just are not the same. I don't really love the glitter mixes in them. Like, they're pretty and sparkly, but I just prefer the original glitter mix formula. And again, I know that they had to retire those, or at least I'm pretty sure it was because of like ingredient sourcing issues. But even when it comes to limited edition releases, I feel like that is the biggest criticism around Holo Taco, which at first I could kind of excuse because I can understand like the certain special events that would cause it to be a limited edition release, like their anniversary collection, Christine's birthday collection, obviously any collabs that they do, like with Julian or Sophia. Most recently, I think 2 years ago at this point, they started their Holo Royalty collection, which at first was a trio, then this past year was a quad, and those are now limited edition. So while it's only 3 or sometimes 4 limited edition releases throughout the year, it definitely can feel a lot, especially because the anniversary is in August, Simply's birthday is in October, and last year in September they launched the Sophia collab, so it was literally a 3-month period where each release was limited edition. I do understand that all of those like circumstances are special enough to warrant a limited edition release, but it still sucks considering like how big the brand has gotten, where they just can't always meet the demands. But I do greatly appreciate them trying their best, like with the most recent birthday collection that sold out basically within the day. The last that I heard is that they are trying very hard to get it restocked. I don't think every single polish is going to be coming back, and you know, that's another kind of gripe, but I'm a little bit more forgiving at least if they are able to bring back the majority of them, considering how fast they sold out. If I remember correctly, they did do the same with the Sophia collab last year, where they just sold out like in the same day, like within a couple of hours. And so they were able to restock like maybe 3 of the shades, if I remember correctly. But at the same time, I do also completely understand the frustration of constantly hearing the whole, oh, they don't do FOMO marketing anymore, only for them to sell out within the day. I definitely get it. It really sucks, but I don't think this is like intentional at all. I do genuinely think though that Christine and Holo Taco in general have done their best with listening to feedback. Like a couple of years ago, a lot of people were just really upset over not being able to see the swatches of the collection until the day that it actually launches, which I completely understand. And I also get that, you know, Christine does do her launch streams, and that's really fun and to be a part of, especially, you know, in the community. But for everybody else, it does kind of suck to have to wait on that. But I think it was like earlier this year, if not a year ago, that they started to share some of these swatches earlier, like the week leading up to the launch, which I think a lot of people are happier about. And more recently, they even improved when it comes to sending their PR earlier, because if you've been following my channel, you know before I would usually have my Holo Taco video like the day after it launches, because I would get the collection on the day that it launches. And don't get me wrong, I completely understand that when it comes to PR, there's no obligation to share, but like obviously if I get it, I'm gonna want to share it as early as possible. So I think that is another thing that they really listen to, because I definitely saw a lot of that feedback in my comment section about wishing that my videos could go up earlier, especially because of the comparisons that I share. And I'm not even gonna lie, I had considered like sending an email to them to ask them if I could potentially get PR earlier, or even just for them to send PR earlier to like everybody on their PR team. But I honestly was just kind of scared to do that. So I am really glad that they somehow saw that feedback, whether they also saw it in like their own social media comments, because you don't know how excited I was when I got the Dark Academia collection a whole week before it launched. It was so refreshing to be able to have all that time to work on the video, because like I mentioned before, I would do these like 1-day turnarounds with my videos, and while I am privileged enough to have the time to do that, I don't like having to do that. So I am really grateful that they have been receptive of that feedback and are sending PR earlier too. So yeah, I think that covers everything. I feel like this video was not really all over the place, but almost that it was like lacking in a way. And again, it's just because I don't have a lot of Holo Taco, and the polishes that I do have, while I do really like some of them, like the ones that I shared in this video, the majority of the ones that I really, really love are just not around anymore. So, you know, I feel like this wasn't the best of the best, but it's like the best of what I have. So I really do hope that you enjoyed this video. Please leave me a like if you did, and leave me any and all thoughts you have down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.